And there's some information in the program guide about all the incredible people who we have on this stage. But I'm going to first introduce our moderator and our first presenter for this session, Sarah Sutton from Environment and Culture Partners, who has also been an incredible guide for understanding what we need to do in terms of resources and how we can collectively come together to really move and change behavior and really move the needle forward. So I'm going to hand it to Sarah. I think you could also mark this.
All right, it's right here. Oh, we'll give this a go.
Okay.
However, the clock, the clicker, and the microphone all together.
You're good at it.
I'm multi-dexterous. We'll figure it out. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I want to thank Danielle, Devin, and Cindy for helping us get to this point today. We've been in conversation at Environment and Culture Partners with them a little bit and admire their work from afar. So I'm Sarah Sutton. I may be a CEO, but it's a CEO of a nonprofit, not a consulting company. It's called Environment and Culture Partners because just like what Danielle and Devin said, this work doesn't get done without partnerships. And I'm a museum professional first and then became a climate person, and you know how that works. Once you start being a climate person, there's just no going back. So I'm going to talk a little bit to give you an overview. All of the images you see on the screen represent a program or an activity in climate action in the cultural sector. And I want you to see all of that because it demonstrates that on those moments, on those days, in those moments when you feel like, maybe, was this really a good idea? Am I the only one doing this? Does anyone care? All of this other work is going on around you, and it doesn't even include the work of the three panelists here with me. So I want to start with the first one, America is all in. In 2021, when there was a change in leadership in the United States, there was a statement from the White House about the U.S. nationally determined contribution to the goals of the Paris Agreement, that we would contribute a reduction of 50 to 52% in carbon emissions for the United States to those goals. And when they read the statement, the White House made the statement, they included, and I'm going to read, all of the types of organizations that supported the research to get to that number. They recognized the leadership of mayors, county executives, governors, tribal leaders, businesses, faith groups, wait for it, cultural institutions, then healthcare organizations, investors, and communities. It's hard to imagine the amount of work that got cultural institutions into that phrase, but it was so worth it because it recognized the role of everyone in contributing to the climate agreement. That's what we asked him to say, and that's what all the individuals, the artists, institutional workers contributed to that. But fortunately, and not surprisingly, that's not the only thing that's going on. There's lots of activity that supports getting to that goal. So you'll see something called Culture Over Carbon. Some of your institutions might have participated in that. It was work to understand exactly what the level of emissions are from cultural institutions, museums, zoos, gardens, historic sites in the United States, to teach organizations how to understand what their emissions are from energy use. And when we discovered that folks were having trouble doing that work, finding their energy bills and calculating their energy consumption, we did an add-on called the Carbon Inventory Project, where we helped people do the calculation. And we came up with a number of the impact from energy use in the United States from cultural institutions. So our baseline from 2023 is 4 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent. To contribute to that 50 to 52%, we at least ought to come down to that by 2030. But it's a little hard to get to that work. So a couple of things happen. You know the funders who are going to be speaking afterwards are contributing meaningfully to doing some of that work. But it doesn't all just happen in energy work. Well, let's see, Sarah, who spoke earlier, mentioned the BISO agreement. Over there on the right, you see the image the plus-minus dilemma of whether or not we're going to broaden the parameters of temperature and relative humidity in a place where we keep our collections on exhibit or in storage. And we'd like to demonstrate that that saves carbon and money in doing work that cares for our collections. So that's now part of a current project called the min-max dilemma, and we're trying to figure out by measuring in institutions what their energy use is, and if they change those parameters, can you determine if when you change your parameters, you can save energy? But there's a lot more work to be done, like things like engaging with the public. So all of these resources are free online, but the one you're really going to look forward to is the one on the left, that is the Climate Action Playbook. That will be out probably in November this year, led by Madison Children's Museum, and it's how to engage with families and caregivers with children under 8 who talking about climate change. And then the one in the middle there you see is a resilience project funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities, where it's helping organizations figure out how to develop resilience programs that help them and their communities deal with the impacts of climate change. And I want to give you 2 examples of museums doing this work. So the image on the left is from Trash Lab, which is Madison Children's Museum of Art activity that was conducted during COVID in partnership with the city solid waste program. And they created art and information exhibits using trash, installed it in a mobile trailer, and took it around the city to have public engagement programs during COVID when there weren't other ways to engage people. But they're also leading a program now funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities on helping children's museums and science centers reduce their carbon footprints. And if any of you ever get to go to Madison Children's Museum, they have a new exhibit called the Nice Age Trail. Not the Ice Age Trail, which is a program the city has about the geography and the history of the community. The Nice Age Trail on human interactions and raising well-behaved, empathetic, considerate children. The entire thing is created with artists using salvaged and sustainable materials. And then the image on the right is the Tacoma Art Museum, a recipient of a Frankenthaler Climate Initiative grant, a participant in Culture Over Carbon, a participant in the Min-Max project. Doing all of that work together because, like I said, once you get started, you just can't stop. And there are so many ways in which you engage. So the Tacoma Art Museum is a great example of that. And one last thing I want to leave you with before I pass it on to others. If you or anyone questions why we do this work and whether or not our publics think we should, this is research from Susie Wilkening, the Wilkening Park. Susie Wilkening in Seattle did a museum survey in 2022 for the American Alliance of Museums asking about whether or not museums should educate on climate change or act on climate change. There are actually 2 slides, you only got 1 today. But in both of them, every single type of museum is being asked by museum goers and by museum, even people who don't go to museums, to talk about climate change or to act on climate change. Only a small percentage, at the most 12%, are saying, no, this isn't the purview of our work. So that's your mandate, to go forth and continue your climate action. I'm about to pass it on to our next presenters. I want to cue who's next. Oh, you got a slide. Okay, while you're swapping, yeah, thank you very much, Cindy. I want to ask about the folks in the audience so that they have some context for modifying their comments or maybe for when we get to Q&A. So if you are from the city, a city, please raise your hand. All right. Somebody maybe from state level? Anyone federal level? All right. How many artists? Awesome. How many people work in a museum? And any other identity I might have missed? Shout it out. Yes, ma'am.
Nonprofit.
Nonprofit.
Architects and designers.
Art. Lovely.
Teaching art.
Teaching art.
Arts and climate researcher.
Arts and climate researcher. Excellent. Any behavioralists? Grief counselor, psychologist.
That's everyone.
Yeah. All right.
It's been a year.
Yeah, it has been quite a year. All right.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. My name is Esailama Artry-Diouf. I'm a mother. I'm a dancer of 40 years. My family had a dance company since 1975 in the Bay Area. Both my parents came from Liberia and Senegal, West Africa. They made each other here and have been teachers in the school system for 40 years. High school, community college, and university. And then my background is teaching arts in university and high school as well. Before I came into philanthropy about 12 years ago. So I'm currently at the San Francisco Foundation. I've been at the foundation for about 6 years. And before that, I was at the city of Oakland in the Cultural Affairs Division with Roberto Bedoya, who's retiring for about another 7 years there. And then before that, I was just working as an arts administrator, grant writer for a lot of arts organizations nationally and also worldwide. The San Francisco Foundation! I think I'm a little bit different than my esteemed panelists in the sense that my expertise is not climate justice. My expertise is really arts and cross-sectoral conversations about how arts can be placed at the center of many of our social questions and challenges, including climate justice. And the San Francisco Foundation has kind of an overall look at it to say, how do we have all Bay Area, all 9-county Bay Area communities, residents, feel economically secure, rooted in vibrant communities, and civically engaged. So when we talk about economically secure, for me, I always look at it from the arts lens. How do we place artists with fair wage, living wage, at the center and in jobs, W-2 jobs, not just 1099 jobs, unless they want the 1099 jobs, at the center of some of the issues that kind of, some of our communities need education, awareness, inspiration, action, and change. So when we think about economically secure, I think that this program that we're talking about through the city of San Jose, the work through the Cultural Strategies program in Oakland, and the work that's happening in Sacramento with cultural strategy is really that first step about how do we place artists in city government positions, in city government departments, to help city governments really build trust and build a bridge with communities, particularly those that have been historically marginalized communities, think about these social issues very differently and make it digestible for communities to really be inspired and make change. In terms of the civic engagement piece of it, a lot of the work of the San Francisco Foundation is about policy change. If we want to see change, we have to work from a systems level, and systems work is long-term work. So even as we think about climate justice and we think about carbon emissions and waste, a lot of this has to work on the legislative and the policy side of things. And how can artists work with policymakers and legislators and representatives to think about what communities need? What are some community-led solutions that can be scaled up and actually turned into policy? The other part, in terms of rooted in vibrant communities, I call our artists as first and second responders, with our other first and second responders as well. So when there's damage within our communities, when there's upheaval within the communities, a lot of times it's the artists that repurpose their spaces, they repurpose their lives, they create community when communities they feel disconnected in many ways. So we need our arts and culture communities, and I'm also speaking about folk and traditional arts as well. I think when people think about arts, they think about visual art, they think about contemporary art, but oftentimes they leave out our cultural bearers, our cultural practitioners, the people who are healers within our communities, and the people who lift spirits and make us feel like we belong to something, And think about those folks who are migrant folks who've migrated here from homelands And the one thing that keeps many immigrant people rooted is their cultural practices that they remember as a young person from home, whatever that homeland is. We bring those homelands here, and that's what makes America what it is, really. It's all the diversity of our homelands that we bring here and the cultural practices that we bring and share with each other. Down is up.
Down is up.
Thank you. So part of the work that I hold at the San Francisco Foundation is the Arts and Culture portfolio. And there's about, what is up here? I put here 4, but I think there's 5. We do nonprofit grant making to nonprofit organizations across this idea of civic engagement rooted in vibrant communities and economically secure. So our cultural hubs, our cultural anchors that are working across those 3 areas. We also have our artistic hub cohort. The cohort model is something that we started back with Teiger, who was one of the first program officers at the San Francisco Foundation. And it was this idea of how can we work together in a way that we may not be able to work independently. And the cohort model has been successful in the sense that it brings mixed budget organizations together to tackle something together. And this particular year, our cohort model was the Bay Area Creative Corps, which City of San Jose and the work that Danielle and Devin are doing are part of our grantee partners to really push that work forward across the 9 counties. In the 29 organizations a part of the Bay Area Creative Corps, a quarter of them are looking at climate justice, environmental resiliency, and sustainability across the 9-county region. And we have the City of San Jose in the Climate Art Program. We also have Youth versus Apocalypse. It's here, right? Where are y'all? Who's Youth versus Apocalypse? Not there yet? But Youth versus Apocalypse. We have another organization called Civic Design Studio that's doing work with schools and high schools and really trying to lift up education, awareness, and inspiration with young people and their relationship to the land and their relationship to each other. So how we relate to the land is an opening of how we can relate to each other. As I talk to the young people, I tell them, when you're in your mother's womb, it's water you're in. As you come out as an adult, more than 80% of your body is water. So your connection to water is so key to your connection to life and how we live. And who would have thought, when I was younger, we never had bottled water. We didn't buy bottled water. So just the fact that I've come now as an older adult and we're buying bottled water, you know, and in plastic containers. And we're talking about the use of plastic and the waste of plastic. And we look at countries like Rwanda, which I think has eliminated plastic, right? And we're trying to do that work here in California. So just some of the conversations with the young people as we think about them, and as we think 7 generations beyond ourselves, right? There's a native saying that talks about 7 generations beyond ourselves, and how the actions that we have today impact those generations to come, not just the next generation, but 7 generations to come. So it's really important for us to think about what we're doing today and how it may impact even when we're not here in that moment. Our literary awards is something that really, you know, we want people to read. Nowadays, people don't read as much, right? So when we're talking about the climate justice movement, how are we doing this? Sometimes you really inspire people through poetry. You inspire them through spoken word. So how do we get people to think about the climate justice movement through various forms of artistic practice? Visual art and museum art, yes. Performing arts, yes. Literary arts, particularly when we think about young people, they like hip hop, they like, you know, hip stuff. And some of that comes through literature and spoken word, but we want them to read, right? So our literary awards is for emerging and up and coming artists to think about various issues, and the issue areas have changed over time. One of them has been climate justice, that we do the awards, and we do it every other year for the literary. The Mercury and Cadogan Awards are our visual arts awards that we do for second-year graduate students to inspire their work and inspire how they think about waste in their work. And working with Soma Arts is our partner that we partner with every year. I just put this up here because they told me they wanted a picture. And I love this mural. It talks about, that's the idea of partnerships and cross-sectorial work. This mural was created in downtown Oakland, and initially it was at 14th and Alice Street, and it's across the street somewhere called the Malunga Arts Center. And the Malunga Arts Center in downtown Oakland is a historic building, and I've lived all over the world. I lived in South Africa, in Netherlands, and in Brazil, and in the Caribbean. And I came back to the Bay Area because there is no place like where we are, really, in the world. In the sense that you can travel 30 minutes and be at a river. You know, you can travel an hour and be in a totally different environment. But in addition to our diversity within our landscape, there's diversity within our people. So this building holds about 10 different performing arts companies that all work in schools across the 9-county Bay Area. And it represents the geographic area where you have African diaspora, you have the Asian diaspora, and you have them talking and engaging with each other around issues that are impacting their community and their neighborhood. You have the Northern California Islamic Center that's also in conversation. So this represents this idea of how communities can come together, inspire each other, and really do something that is dynamic. When the warriors say there's strength in numbers, this is one model for me of how they will strengthen numbers to move change and policy, because they were able to move policy within open city government as well. So I think, and I think I have, this is my last one. You know, as I think about, I was thinking about, okay, what can we do together? I'm always thinking about what can we do together? You know, and part of this is for sure advocacy work. Advocacy, not just around policy change, but sometimes it's just around education and awareness, right? Raising education and awareness. Social capital. Sometimes people think it's all about the money, and it's not all about the money at times. During the pandemic, many of us saw people who made food for folks, repurpose their houses and their spaces to become food banks and testing centers. It was about people coming together, artists coming together to do something that really is about social capital and not so much about financial capital, even if you didn't have it. So community foundations, just a little bit of education on that. Community foundations are made up of two parts. We're made up of our donor side, which is about half of what our giving is about, our donor advised funds, and we have our community impact side. So because we have a large number of donors who give to issues, all kinds of issues, we really want to always stay in constant communication with our donors, give donor awareness and education about maybe not giving $1 million to the same organization you give to all the time. Let's liberate your funds a little bit. Let's diversify your revenue, or your diversify your giving a little bit. So a lot of that comes from our donor education awareness. So we have donor convenings, we have panels, we have different things that we implement to really help donors think big and think creatively and think, strategically about their giving. Our funding network that works. Okay. So one of the things a long time ago I was thinking about, you can have a network, but that doesn't mean it works. So really thinking strategically about who are in our circles and how do we activate those people in our circles to bring out the best in what they do and really work those networks that they have. So creating like a Charlotte's Web that really is strong. Those spider webs are really strong. You look at them and they're very thin, but they're very strong. So creating strong networks that activate and move the dial in ways that we are walking towards a common goal and a common North Star. Ecosystem giving. Same connected with the funding network that works is that how do we access people in policy? How do we access community-based organizations? How do we access the arts and culture community? How do we access our young people? So that is all a part of our ecosystem. And how do we make change that is effective through the use of activating our ecosystem? So I think I'll stop here.
I'm going to read a bunch of quotes from other researchers that I've collected about hope and climate action. This is why I asked if there are any psychologists in the room. Climate psychologists are learning that climate grief and anxiety are a manifestation of a person's awareness of climate change, and that individual awareness and learning about climate change are necessary for beginning to build skills and foster necessary continued action. Ecological worrying is a normal and expectable behavior that has been correlated with pro-environmental attitudes and behaviors, and with positive personality traits such as openness and agreeableness. It seems greater understanding of climate change is more strongly associated with action than with hope. What we know so far is that hope is associated with agency, meaning your concept of your ability to take action and create change, and expansive thinking, and it can galvanize action. Messages that instill hope in the audience motivate commitment to engaging in action. There's growing evidence that participating in collective action, so not just yourself, but with the people in the room, the neighbors, the other sectors, can stimulate a general, long-lasting, positive psychological transformation within the activist. Collective action strengthens the identification with others and induces collective empowerment. Feelings of social connectedness, empowerment, and efficacy emerge from participation in collective action, and they feed into your agentic self-emissions and nurture the conviction that change is possible. So my question for the panelists is, think back about all of the work you've done and your awareness on issues of climate, community, nature, environment, well-being, and your trajectory of change of your hopefulness and agency over time. Do you feel like it's gone up, it's gone down, it's been bolstered in a variety of ways, but think about how hope has changed in you in the work that you've done over the years. So we'll give you 2 more speakers to think about that.
Hello. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Larissa Harris. I'm the Executive Director of Teiger Foundation. We are a foundation in New York. So basically, the images that you see here are of projects that we have funded that are also part of our climate program. So I'm going to just talk about that program, in general for a little bit, and then we'll go through the images and I'll tell you tidbits about what those images are all about. So, speaking of cities and speaking of engaging in cities and artists engaging in cities, I just wanted to say that I would not be here today if it were not for the artist Merle Lederman-Ukeles, who many of you may know of. She was, and still is, the self-appointed artist in residence at the New York City Department of Sanitation since 1977 up until today. I was the very, very lucky co-curator of her first retrospective at the Queens Museum in 2016. And it was she who really opened my eyes, I think, to the possibilities of artists, systems, system change, and also the possibility of thinking and the power of acknowledgement and thanking others for the work that they do. So I want to thank all of you here today for being here, and thank Merle. Yes, I just mentioned I was a curator for a long time. I was a curator for 20 years, and then in 2021, I found myself the inaugural executive director of this foundation, a small foundation, about $5 million a year, 5 to 6 million. The mission of this foundation is to support contemporary visual art curators to do their work. So both to do their work as curators, i.e. to develop their exhibitions and projects, but also how they do their work. The how is what I'm kind of concentrating on today. And the climate program that we initiated really is about how you can do your work. So basically the way that it works at Teiger is we have a big open call. All curators around the United States are very welcome to submit their projects and programs to us for funding. And we've only actually done this twice, so 2023 and 2024. But basically we have approximately 30 grantees per year, and then a subset of those participate in our climate action for curators. We did a pilot last year in 2023, and we're starting and we're kind of like launching formally this year. So how does it work? What I hope makes this program special is that we provide a year's worth of sustainability coaching to a curator to co-create a climate plan for their Teiger-funded project. And then, once that plan has been created with a sustainability coach, we provide additional funds to execute that plan. Pretty simple. How did this come about? Well, some of the people who